Welcome, everybody, to the American Space Museum. I'm Mark Marquette. So glad you're with us today to stay curious. And beside me is Nick Thomas. Nick, great to see you.
Good to be seen. Thank you.
Nick, you've been doing this for over a year. He is, of course, the lead communicator out at Kennedy Space Center Visitors Complex. Over 38 years, he's won the Silver Snoopy Award, the Kokum Award, and for communications. And we love him coming on and just talking about current events, and that's what we're going to do today.
Yeah.
We lined up a couple of things in the news today and had a great conversation with you. Nick is our master of ceremonies at our Shuttle Fest, and you believe this will be your third year to do that.
Yeah. Looking forward
And
to
we
it.
we
Got a
had
good
the
lineup coming up.
yes, we do.
Yeah.
We great input, Marty and he and I and Bill Whiting. Hey, Bill, great to always bake bread with you. Uh, you didn't know any of us a few years
Yeah,
ago
that's
at
true.
all,
That's true.
at all.
I
And
was,
now all of a sudden we're like,
I was
you
blissfully
can't get
ignorant of
away
this.
from us.
I was blissfully ignorant of this whole operation.
Yeah, that's right. And what do you think of it now, what you know
That's
about it?
great. It's especially to see. It's especially heartening to see the growth of a concept like Space Fest and see it coming along the years and growing to what it is now and the scope that it's looking at. And also to see the exhibits that you have here in the museum. The hat you were just recently showing me, the aft main
Yeah.
engine compartment.
You
It's
never know what we have hanging around
no,
here,
no.
particularly me.
There's
You
there's
just look
always
around my office
there's always something
and
new, and I think that's great. It speaks volumes of the growth of this
yeah.
museum and its future.
Thank you, Nick. And you're a big part of Shuttle Fest and will be part of the future of Shuttle Fest. You got a question for Nick? Of course, we're going to talk about the things that were in the news yesterday or last week, meaning Blue Ghost and Intuitive Machines and
Mhm.
Starship and my gosh, Butch and Sonny are going to get saved.
That's going to be good. That's going to be quite a homecoming. I'd like to be at Ellington at the hangar when they come back.
You've been reading some stuff about that, and we'll get
Yep.
to that here in just a minute. But yeah, we're blessed to have people like Nick Thomas, Terry White, Mikey Haddad that have embraced our museum, like you all have. We've got a great, intelligent group of viewers out there, Nick. I think you know that. They know a lot about space and they hunger for more.
Yep.
And you know, Nick, sometimes I got to step back a little bit and remember I'm from Findlay, Ohio. I didn't know anything. And 7 years here meeting people like you and Marty, I say if I have a gallon of knowledge, I had about a pint when I came here.
Well, that's a great thing about the space program. There's always something new happening. There's always more to learn.
Uh-huh. But you deal with the people every day. Do you ever have to step back and say, "Gee, wait a minute. They're really crazy about my Apollo jacket here. I wear this all the time."
Well, what
You
I
know what I mean, Nick? Though.
what I find myself doing, particularly with the autograph opportunities and the chat was, is I'll have to remind myself occasionally that these people, God bless them, they're from all over the country, they're from all over the world. They didn't have the exposure to the program that I was fortunate to have when I was growing up. There are things that I take for granted as far as knowledge is concerned that these folks haven't been exposed to yet. And it's our privilege to be able to expose them to that and to teach them some new things, things that they never knew before, things that they never considered as far as a space program is concerned. Not only the technical data, but the benefits that they personally derive from the program. So I always have to, well, occasionally I have to remind myself, hey, these people are working from a different database, and it's your job to bring them up to that level where they have the fuller understanding and appreciation of it. And if I'm doing my job right, I'll take away the mystery, but I'll leave the mystique.
Mm, great way to put it. He does a great job. If you've ever had the opportunity to come to Kennedy Space Center, uh, they always have an astronaut twice a day, gives a
Mm-hmm.
free talk, and
Yep.
then you can get a free autograph and a picture with them, or buy a $10 lithograph for them to autograph. And
Yeah.
business is really good out there, isn't it?
Been quite busy. We're coming up on the spring break. We had an especially busy Friday 2 weeks ago, where we had the confluence of 4,000 in charters and also a morning launch.
Oh,
So I think we did well over 9,000 people that day.
wow,
So
that's something else in there.
good times.
Uh, who you got coming out there if someone's taking a vacation down here?
Well, right now we have John David Bartow, who is a civilian, Navy civilian payload specialist. And following him, we will have Terry Wilcott, who is a naval aviator, Marine pilot, who flew shuttle missions. And both of them have great stories. And it's always interesting to juxtapose a scientist with a pilot, in that you get two different ends of the
Yeah.
spectrum as far as knowledge is concerned. And Terry has said he would like to do a panel with um, Bonnie Dunbar, who he flew with,
Oh,
and Bonnie could speak to the science aspect of the mission, and he could speak to the flying aspect of the mission. I think that'd be pretty fascinating.
sounds like a future Shuttle Fest panel.
I wouldn't doubt
I
it.
would love that.
Wouldn't doubt it,
And
because they've got some good stories they can.
yeah, no, definitely. I don't
Yeah.
know much about Bonnie Dunbar. I mean, as far as, personally or anything. And Heidi Piper,
Yeah.
Stefanski
Haida,
Piper,
Haida Marie Stephanician Piper.
Stephanician, is that how you
Yes.
say that?
Haida Marie,
Stephanician.
Haida
Yeah.
Marie Stephanician Piper. She is, she's a great, great guest. She is a naval deep sea diver.
Oh,
And that was just for her, that was just an obvious natural to go from that to spacewalker.
yeah.
And she tells some great stories about EVA, about her life in the Navy also, which a lot of people don't think about. They come to see the astronaut, but they learn about the sailor. They learn about the deep sea diver in the Navy. So she's always great to have.
Well, we'll look forward to that. Woody Spring and Bob
Mm-hmm.
Senker, both are in your
Mm-hmm.
queue, usually once a quarter. And boy, if
Woody,
you ever get a chance to see Mr. Fred Gregory, don't miss
yeah.
that. He'll be there March 29th. He'll be our
Mm-hmm.
April Fool's guy. Maybe we'll have to do something.
And Fred and I will probably make one appearance over at Shiloh's, where
Okay.
we usually have cigars and
I was
brandy
going to
and
say,
real
you'll probably
good
stop down here at the
conversation.
cigar store down there. Yeah. Yeah. He's and Fred Gregory, commander, pilot of a shuttle.
And
And
AA for space flight, AA for safety, deputy administrator for NASA.
mhm.
So Fred knows the program from both sides of the house, from the flying side of the house and from the administrative side of the house. And I always learn something new and fascinating from him, particularly about the Washington, D.C. scene. And we've been having some great conversations recently about the naming of Jared Isaacman as NASA administrator, and what kind of things he's going to be bringing with him in the way of
Okay.
future plans for NASA. So
We're going to
Fred's
end the
always-
program with Jared
Yeah.
Isaacman, so you can
Mhm.
do that. So that's out there at March, and then a lot of good ones always coming in there, and we like the repetitive ones. They kind of now get. My approach has been out about every 20 astronauts, 2 or 3 of them are going to really get what we're doing here and have time to get it, and help along the way. So I don't have any of my devices with me. I'm freewheeling. Marty's going to be my connection to you beautiful people out there. Oh, okay, Marty, you got a solution there.
There you go.
Just to see who's on there. I know Mia's watching. Hello, Mia, with your grandpa Stangy there. And I know Dave's probably going to have he's been thinking all afternoon of a question to ask you. I'm sure Dave Stangy up
Now you
there.
see, you can always count on a Grumman guy to come up with a solution.
Absolutely. We got Mitch Rothman, talked to him this morning, financial supporter of Shuttle Fest. He's in Colorado. Steve Jokums, happy Monday to you, Steve. He said, Nick and all the folks. He's from Fox Lake, Illinois. Dave Stangy there with Mia, and Julie Clay's watching. And Julie, thank you for your help. She helped a lot with our reno, as did Connie McDaniel and Marty over the weekend. Mark Usiak says, hi, Nick.
Hey, Mark. How you doing?
His big brother will be here
Good show.
this weekend.
Good.
Bob Mayran is on. Dean Babcock, Tom Celentano. Always good to hear Mr. Thomas's commentary. And that means shut up, Mark, and let him talk. Larry Pushker, good to see you up there, Larry. Good friend and of our Stay Curious family here. It has been a while, but glad you're there, Larry. Hope you're doing well. And Michael Bruno, he's got a question right out of the chute for you, Nick. When did the visitor complex open?
Visitor complex was constructed in '66, and we opened in 1967. I have some ancient pictures at home, which I can bring along sometime, of what the visitors complex looked like at that time. There are 3 buildings out there right now that are from the original visitors complex from 1967. But we have grown so incredible. But when you look at these old pictures and you see I think we had 3 or 4 buildings. We had a lunar module mock-up. We had a mock-up of the SLA service module, command module, and launch escape system. And everything else was just grass. And now it's completely different out there. But we really have grown over the years. So yeah, we came online in 1967 under the express orders, if you will, of Dr. Kurt Debus, who was our KSC Center director at the time. And it was Dr. Debus's idea that the American public are paying for this, so the American public have every right to come out here and come to a place to learn how their money is being spent and what we're accomplishing. And now, of course, Dr. Debus's philosophy is spread not only across all of America, but around the world, because we have, as you know, a majority of international, I'll call them ridership, visitors at the visitors
Boy, it
complex.
is full of, they love it. They're just all over the world
Yes.
there.
Yep.
And yeah, we'd love to have you. You did a program over a year ago on the Space Center and some old pictures. And one thing back in the 90s I miss seeing is one you could sit in a lunar module mock-up and get a picture made with your buddies. That was over where the Hall of Fame building is now, I think.
Let's see, the Hall of Fame.
And then up in the air was a Soyuz spacecraft.
Oh yeah, right. Yeah, that was the old Hall of History.
Okay.
And we had the command module from ASTP there, and we had the Gemini 9 capsule, and we had a Mercury capsule from one of the unmanned Redstone flights. So that was where we concentrated all of our exhibits in that one building. It's where we now have the Mars exhibit and where we have the astronaut encounter office. So again, that's an indication of how much we've grown over the years.
Well, and it's amazing how it's still growing. We'll talk later about some big 5-story plan in the works there with I'm hearing a little Disney touch to it, but
I'm not hearing anything about it.
Oh, you're not?
No, they meant. I think they want to keep the idea of whatever it's going to be. I think they want to keep it under wraps for as long as they can.
Okay.
To heighten the impact for the general public when it finally does come online.
Well, good. Marty, go ahead. He's got a question there.
Deep Babcock is asking, did tourists ever allow entry into the VAB in the early days?
We sure did. We could go into the north doors of the low bay, and there was a plexiglass partition there, if you will, and a small rostrum for a speaker to give the public a briefing. The buses would come up, unload, they'd come into the low bay there, and get about a 20-minute briefing and Q&A from someone there in the vehicle assembly building. All that ceased when the shuttle program came up and we started stacking solid rocket boosters in there because the building was unclassified, essential personnel only, hazardous operations. And then after the shuttle program ended, we reopened that concept for about 2 years while we're in between shuttle and SLS. So now, of course, we're building SLS, stacking live solid segments in there. We're again hazardous operations, essential personnel only. But for 2 periods in history, we had that vehicle assembly building open to the general public, and it was always a highlight of the bus tour.
Good question there. I'm having a bad hair day, so I'm wearing my hat from the Australian Research and Space Exploration, ARS. I took it off the head of Cliff Watson, who sat here. He's in Australia. Cliff hasn't joined us yet, but see, that's what they call their NASA.
Right. Yep.
Australian Research and Space Exploration, official helmet, ARS. Can't make that stuff up here in America.
Hambo was over there helping them get set up some years ago.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly. So, well, let's talk a little bit about Shuttle Fest. We talked about, here's our lineup. We are going to have an autograph session on Friday night here at the American Space Museum and have an evening with Joanne Morgan, the first woman engineer in the Apollo launch room, and she's done so much other things. A glass ceiling breaker, just like Eileen Collins for women, and Don Thomas, and Joe Tanner, and John Grunsfeld. Uh, you've probably met most of them.
Yeah, I know Don. Don and I have worked together for many years. Joe T is a friend. I haven't worked with Mike Grunsfeld yet,
Mm-hmm. John
or John
Grunsfeld, yeah.
Grunsfeld yet. I'm sorry.
Hey, he's the most experienced Hubble spacewalker, the last human to touch the Hubble.
Yeah, kind of thought of as Mr. Hubble out there.
Yeah, and thank you, Mikey Haddad, for getting those two astronauts. Mikey does a monthly program, a level 4 NASA engineer there, and I mean Don's just Don. He's a fun
Yeah,
guy,
yeah.
and of course he's a Buckeye like me, so he
And
probably never met a stranger.
and trivia wise, Don Thomas, and I'll put this on the record. Don always gets a kick out of this, but Don was the first human being to eat pizza, real pizza, in space. And what had happened was on the launch pad, they normally have a sandwich in their pocket that they can eat either while they're waiting on the pad or when they first get up into orbit. Well, Don asked the kitchen, said, if instead of a sandwich, could I get a slice of pepperoni pizza, please? I said, yeah, sure. So they put a slice of pepperoni pizza in his pocket.
You're
and he
saying the
ate-
pocket would be on the leg there,
on
that's
the,
where he
on the,
slapped
the
down there?
launch escape suit.
Uh-huh.
And he ate it up on orbit. So Don Thomas is the first person to eat pizza in space. So that's probably $5 on a bar trivia bet for you.
That is also, and because he says this all the time. If I opened a restaurant of astronaut food, Don Thomas would never come darken the
No.
doors.
No.
Yeah.
Don has his opinion about space food, as
Yeah.
all the guys do.
He-
But Don's is probably a little less forgiving than most.
Yeah, he's just I'm not going to say it was good because it wasn't,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
it nourished us and kept
Yeah.
us alive.
Kept us alive, and that's all it was supposed
and that's
to
all it
do.
was supposed to do up there in space. So, you got a question for Nick Thomas? Bring it on, but we got to do a little bit of space history because he's a baby boomer like me and Marty, and you hate to miss these little anniversaries every year because someday you will.
And such an important one here with the flight of Apollo 9. An incredible, an incredible engineering flight test mission, testing the lunar module for the very first time in the space environment. The first time ever that two spacecraft separated from one another with people in each, and the two in the LEM had to get back because the LEM wasn't coming back. So a lot of risk. It's a very, very daring mission, and it was a connoisseur's mission, I like to call it, because it had everything in it that you would want, particularly as a test pilot, that you would want to have in a space mission. The testing of a brand new vehicle, doing this for the first time, testing all the life support systems, propulsion, comms, and everything else, and that's what test pilots were all about. I had the privilege of taking a father and son through a tour of the Saturn V Center many years ago. And the young boy I was told ahead of time, the young boy was a big fan of the lunar module. So when we got to the LEM, I took, an especially long time in telling him about it and pointing out some of the features of the spacecraft. And when we got back to the main visitors complex, we went over to the Mila's restaurant, which we had back in those days. And we sat down for lunch, and I looked over at the corner table, and by God, who's sitting there but Jim McDivitt? So I went over to Jim. I said, General McDivitt, I said, if you don't mind, got a young man over here, big fan of the lunar module. When you're finished, could you possibly come over and say hello? I said, oh, yeah, I'd be glad to. So as we were eating and Jim and his guest finished, Jim signaled me, he said, come on over. So I took him over, and I told the young boy, I said, now, do you remember that lunar module that we saw over at the Saturn V Center? He said, yeah. I said, well, meet the test pilot. And Jim just lit up, and he and the kid talked for a good 10, 15 minutes about the lunar module. So that was a big joy. But of course, going back again to the mission and the importance of it, this was just like so many Apollo missions. If this link in the chain failed, we were going to be back to step one. So it was very critical that we get a successful flight out of this vehicle to test all those systems and to make sure they work properly. We also tested for the first time the moonwalking suit in a vacuum environment when Rusty Schweikert went out onto the LEM front porch and spent some time out there in EVA, and Dave Scott popped out of the hatch to the command module, and they had a nice photo session going on back and forth there. So this is one of those missions that is it's one of the unsung heroes of Apollo, because people think of Apollo 7 for the first, Apollo 8 for the lunar orbiting for the first time, and then they skip straight to Apollo 11. They forget 9 and 10, which were very, very critical test flights. So again, hats off to the team of Apollo 9, both in space and on the ground.
Yes, in 1969, going on right now, they landed March 13th. The Jim McDivitt, one of the underrated people of the Apollo era, he could have been a moonwalker, certainly,
Yes.
commanded, but he became the manager
Program
of Apollo.
manager, and he was the right man at the right time, the right place for the right job. And I don't think Apollo would have had near the success that it had if Jim McDivitt had not been in that position.
Lived a long life into 92,
Yeah.
I think, died about a year ago. Gary Allgaier comes on here, and he talks about Jim McDivitt always had something green in the cockpit of his anything he flew. Did you know that?
No, I didn't know that.
Yes, and they actually had him. He changed out one of the knobs on the Apollo chair and had a green knob put on there. And Gary's got a picture of it. I'll show you that one
Very
time
good.
on there.
Very
Yeah,
good.
because he was Irish, and we will be
There
celebrating
you go.
the Irish heritage there. I can't get enough of Jim McDivitt. He didn't write a book. He didn't. To me, wow, you turned down being a moonwalker to be and a lot of people, including a few astronauts, have said, man, he's just burned out. You don't understand the training. And to get ramped up again to walk on the moon, but he saw his calling in a different area.
And Wally Schirra put it perfectly. After or before Apollo 7, when Wally announced ahead of time that he was going to retire from the space program, and he was asked why, and he said, "This business consumes people." He said, "And I have been consumed by this business." And people see the glamour, they see the flight, they see the ticker tape parades, but they don't see the 16-hour days of training, 6 days a week, and all the hardship that goes into that, the travel, being separated from the family and so forth. So there's a price to be paid for something like that, and these guys have paid it. And then at one time or another, each astronaut will make his or her decision. Okay, I put in my time, and I think I'd like to move on to something else. Some of them move into management, like Jim McDivitt did. Some of them go into the corporate life, private enterprise.
Like Borman did.
Like Frank Borman did with Eastern Airlines. But it is, there is so much more to this business than just pretty pictures and ticker tape parades. It's a lot of hard work.
Whatever job you do, all right, start doing it 16 hours a day. And the only time you can see your family is when you go home to sleep and leave, and see how long that works for you.
Yeah.
Okay. But absolutely great to hear these stories from Mr. Nick Thomas. We've got a question for him, Marty, on that UCAC family microphone.
Yeah, Dean Babcock is asking, Nick, could you share your thoughts on the future of the Artemis program? But I think you're all going to talk about that later on in
we've
the
got
show,
that
right?
coming up in one of the last segments.
Yeah,
we'll
we'll talk a little about that. Nick and I are also talking about me being taking a debate of China or USA, who's going to make it to the moon first. I want the USA to make it.
Well,
first,
we've already made it first, so that's done.
Return, that's right.
That's done.
Exactly. We've already made it first. So very good on there. Let's hit a couple of highlights here, things we do want to talk about. There's our Shuttlefest coin that you guys will be able to purchase. Tim Gagnon, Tim, the patch guy.
That's good work.
And this is our shield. This is our forever insignia for the Shuttlefest event. So let's get to some of the news. Butch and Sonny are going to be rescued, finally.
Well, they'll be coming home finally. And of course,
you hear a lot of this from your astronaut friends in your office and other things. What can you tell us?
You hear this from the general public. And the general public is, why has NASA left these guys stranded in space? Well, strictly speaking, they haven't been stranded. They've had plenty of supplies for food, necessities, and so forth. If the need had arisen, they could have come back at any time. But when you send a Dragon spacecraft with 2 people up there, with 2 empty seats to bring these people home, you're not going to go up there, pick them up, and bring them back in 5 days. You want to get maximum usage out of these people going to the space station. So these guys become the part of the next station increment. and that leaves Butch and Sonny up there to assist with that work. Now, one of the things that was being dealt with was the fact that originally the spacecraft for Crew 10, I think it was going to be a brand new Dragon, fresh off the assembly line. But then the administration came in and said, no, those two guys have been up there for long enough, and they can't come back until Crew 10 is up there. They come back with the two folks at Crew 9. So, Elon, why don't you go ahead and put them on a vehicle that has already flown, which is what they're doing. I think that advanced their return by about 2 months, if I'm not mistaken. But there's been a lot of talk about this in the newspapers, particularly the story that the previous administration received an offer from Elon to go up there and get these guys early, and they turned him down. And the thinking was that he was turned down because he was an ally of Donald Trump, and the previous administration did not want any kind of credit in any way, shape, or form going to Donald Trump, even if it was to bring these two astronauts back home. So I expect we're going to be hearing a lot more about that in the future. I expect when Butch and Sonny come home, there is going to be a congressional investigation into all this, and I expect they'll be called to testify. So we'll wait and see what they have to say at that time. And of course, books will be written about this. And I think also after these two folks come home, I think there are going to be a lot of whistleblowers who are going to come forward and say, well, if you didn't know it, here's what was going on in the boardroom, on the shop floor, et cetera, et cetera. So we haven't heard the full story yet, but I expect we will.
Nick, we of course emphasize the personalities of these space travelers that I have the privilege to be around, and so you know a little bit about them from talking to other astronauts there. And you said there, and to set the scene, Sunny has been married 20 some years to her husband, is a ranger in Texas, and they don't have children. They love dogs and so forth. She's very athletic person, marathon runner and all that. Butch has got a wife and two daughters. I don't know the age of the daughters. I think they're early 20s or teenagers. You're going to straighten me out on that. So kind of two different family backgrounds there. And you read something that we talked about today. Why don't you share what you know about the personalities of these people?
Well, on Butch's side, one of his daughters did go onto social media and talk about this situation of Butch being up on orbit much longer than had been anticipated. And she admitted that, yeah, it has caused some stress in the family, some concern and some worry. I think she said in her emails, I think she alluded to that Butch puts up the great face when he's talking publicly, but privately he's been dismayed by this particular situation. So I think, again, as I say before, there's a price to be paid for something like this. Now, you're an astronaut, and when you sign up, you realize that this could be part of the bargain. It's not fun. It's not necessarily enjoyable. Maybe it can be. I don't know. But you've got to be prepared for it and understand it when it rolls along and be prepared to serve the best interests. And I think they've done that. I think Butch and Sonny have done that. They've folded into the ISS crew quite nicely. But people are people. And if you're separated from your family for longer than you think you're going to be,
8 days, honey, and I'll be back in a couple of weeks, and I'll be at your mom's party for
So when this happens, it's gonna impact how you feel about doing things. It's gonna impact morale. We choose exemplary people for the astronaut office for a reason, and this is one of those reasons. We want people who are resilient, people who can, shall you say, roll with the punches, but people who are going to be able to maintain their peak efficiency and performance even through an adversity such as this. And I think we have that. We have exactly that in Butch and Sonny.
I say thank God they are Butch and Sonny. Yeah. Both waited 10 years as Boeing test pilots to test a Starliner. After each of them, Butch has 150 days on the space station. Sonny had over 300 days on two expeditions.
They are both naval aviators and test pilots. Butch is a Marine, and Sonny is a Navy test pilot.
Hoorah, Marty.
So you've got two perfectly placed people up there
Yeah.
who are perfectly placed not only for the malfunctions of the Starliner, but perfectly placed for the extension that they've now had to endure.
Yeah, and that's
And I know the Kelly, one of the Kelly brothers. I keep getting them mixed up.
Mark's the senator.
Yeah. Scott wrote the book Endurance.
Yes.
I think these two can really take that
Yeah.
title away.
Yeah, it's just changing, your whole life. Also,
Yeah.
Sonny's gonna be pushing Peggy Whitson for the most time in space when she comes back.
If she hasn't passed it
over,
already.
she had, over 600 days now. Anyway, it's sort of like I kind of see like Sonny's like this is what I'm living for, and why I'm an astronaut. Butch is me too, but uh, I've got a lot going on. Not that she doesn't. She's got a very support system, her family and stuff. So we will see how this all washes out.
Yeah.
Particularly, but we know they've never been in danger. They're not stranded. Yet the Joe and Jane America out there on the street, that's what they say to me. Oh, they're going to launch that spaceship this week to bring them back. I go, no. There's Crew 10 up there, and McLean's the commander. They are going up there as part of Expedition 73. That Expedition 72 is up there, and the 72 expedition with Nick Hague and the other Russian, they're going to come back and bring Butch and Sonny back. Now that is the strange thing, going up in one spacecraft and coming back in another. I don't think that's been done before.
Well, as I recall, they will be coming back in the spacecraft that,
9.
They will be coming, they'll be coming back on 9. And the first question I think that came up when they talked about this idea was, well, we got to get the suits up to them for the Dragon, because it's not the same suit that you wore for
right.
Starliner.
And spacesuits too.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
They're not going to wear their Boeing.
No. They have to have the SpaceX suit, because only it interfaces with the life support and comm on the Dragon spacecraft. So that was a concern as well.
Here's who we have in space: 3 Chinese. They're going to be coming back soon. They've been up there about 150 days. There's Nick Hague off my shoulder there, that went up with the Russian and had 2 empty seats. And then Don Pettit is the other American up there.
Don, who celebrated his 70th birthday in space. Thank you very much.
Yes, he did. And he's quite a character. I'd love to meet him. They call him the MacGyver.
He reminds me so much of Story Musgrave.
Yeah.
In that he has got such an active mind. He's pursuant of the next mystery.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah, his photography's outstanding. He made a barn door situation up there to track and so forth like that. So, any questions about ISS or that from anybody, Marty, up there?
Nope.
Try to look over here. Looks like we got some new people in there, and appreciate it. I see Steve's got something to talk about there. Well, let's go to the next topic of the news. Intuitive Machines, their Athena, flipped over again. Deja vu times 2 is what we did Friday after Thursday's event of the Intuitive Machines, and then
I saw this picture online, and this is the IM-2 after she had landed and tipped over, and you can see her, she's in the shadow, and there she is. She's laying on the ground. Her life is bleeding out as far as electrical power and so forth is concerned. And the last thing she does is look up at the earth. And I can't remember ever feeling this sorry for a machine in all my life. But there she is, taking her last breaths and looking back at the home planet before the last bit of electricity dies.
Yeah.
Sad.
Absolutely. It's and I'll get to that question here in a minute, Marty. Let me put up here that our friend Nicole Stott and her husband Chris have this hard drive on there. See, that's Charlie Duke's profile there. That when it sets, it reflects the contour of it. And Nicole's is on the other side. It worked for a little while, and from my sources, that was the only science payload that actually worked.
Yeah.
Uh, I mean, what do you think about the? Well, let's look at here and then. Wait, why'd that go there? Wait a second. Oh, I'm going backwards. Forward. What happened here? Oh, I must have hit the wrong button to go reset something. Here's Intuitive Machines, and oh wow, the rest of the pictures didn't load. Okay.
Yeah, they did load. I checked it. I had some problems earlier where I was losing some pictures. So
Okay.
it happened again.
I had some anomalies loading up pictures too. I think we got a bad internet connection. That's okay. We don't need any pictures. We're talking to Nick Thomas here on there. I had a comparison of what the blue moon looked like. It's a little squattier. The profile of the Intuitive Machine is taller than it is wider, and the blue moon looks more like the descent stage of the lunar module on there. That was a beautiful mission that's doing science right now, that's drilling into the moon. It's very successful. And you've got one private company that did it on their first time, another that has failed twice in a row. The stock of those
Well, I
companies
think part
is.
of the discussion that we had today, you made a very important point, is that there are in some corners of the program, perhaps in the private enterprise of this, I am 1 and 2. There's a mindset, a video game mindset, in that it's just if the numbers rack up, I can push the button and we'll land successfully. Ain't that easy. Going to the moon is always going to be hard. And John David Bartow and I were talking about this. And it's always going to be difficult. It's never going to be easy. And you can't take anything for granted. You can't turn your back on the physics of this whole thing. And of course, I told John David, I said, I'm biased. I think if you had a couple pilots up there, it would have been a different manner. But if you set up a system that's where you depend upon technology too heavily, you know, okay, I've got the radars and I've got the laser range rate and all the rest of that jazz, that's going to take care of me. It's not always the case. IM-2 was 250 miles off target. How the hell does that happen?
That's 1/10 of the lunar diameter.
Yeah,
That's a big mistake. Right
and the
there.
way
Wow.
the way that happens is that people underestimate the job. You can't turn your back on a program like this. You can't just assume that because you have superior technology to 40 and 50 years ago that you're going to be okay. It's never going to be easy landing on the moon or going to Mars. It's never going to be easy flying in space.
You know what the old timers tell us, and you just said it earlier, Nick. That's why we had Apollo 9 in Earth orbit. It was amazing. The Grumman lunar module was awesome. And then, okay, we're not going to land on the next one. We're going to go down within 10 miles and do everything but land on the moon, because this is an alien world. I wonder if we understand the physics of the moon. I know we think we do, but 1/6 gravity. There's some lunar mass concentrations of gravity underneath there.
If you ask that question of a test pilot, he'll tell you, "We know what we know, but we don't know what we don't know."
There you go.
There are the knowns, there are the known unknowns, and then there are unknowns, or unkunks, as the Edwards guys used to call them. Unkunks.
Unkunks. Okay.
But that philosophy says you just don't take for granted that something's going to happen right. You've got to. The Apollo guys used to said when they were asked why did Apollo succeed, he said 3 reasons: testing, testing, testing. And that's an example of what you saw in the Apollo program. And I think private enterprise, being private enterprise, they're going to want to get from point A to point B with a straight line. But sometimes there's going to have to be some deviations to that line if you want to test out your systems and be assured of success on the next mission. I don't say bog yourself down in testing, because that doesn't get you anywhere. But at the same time, don't look at a sheet of facts and figures and say, okay, all the numbers add up, we're good. You know, because by God, if you go in with that idea, with that philosophy, something's going to jump up and bite you in the butt.
Well, the deja vu ×2 Thursday, what bothers me is the old timers in our Cape Canaveral gallery that launched 350 Atlas rockets.
Yeah.
Yep, like you said earlier, they were blowing them up left and right and so forth. But rarely did the same problem bite them.
Yeah.
It was something up the chain from the other thing. They always fixed what happened, and then something else bit them. And here you have two things. The IM-1 and 2 both tipped over. All right. And now the Starship
Yeah.
didn't get past the
Second stage failure.
Cuba.
Yeah, second stage
So
failure on
what's
that.
your what are you hearing from your friends at the campus there about
Oh, very-
Starship?
Very little, because SpaceX is a very quiet operation, let's put it that way. But some of the guesswork I hear out there, which I tend to agree with, is that we might have over-engineered ourselves into a problem, which is to say, in trying to make too many improvements or too deep of improvements, that we might have jinxed ourselves. I honestly don't know. But I do know that Elon Musk and SpaceX have a justified reputation for not letting these things stop them. Going back again to what we were doing in the 50s and 60s, we were blowing them up left and right down there. But as one old-time engineer told me, back in those days, when these rockets were blowing up, the politicians got scared and they stayed away from us because they didn't even want to be remotely associated with a program that could literally blow up in their face. But as a result of that, the guy told me, we had the chance and the time to learn from our mistakes without somebody breathing down our neck. So Musk and his people are going to learn from their mistakes. They're going to solve these problems, and they're going to move forward efficiently. The one concern I have, as we've talked about before, is the involvement of Starship with Artemis and the architecture. You know, the requirement of 12 refueling flights using the Starship vehicle. And that seems to be too many moving parts, too many possible single point failures on something like that.
Which fueling on that scale's never been done yet.
No, it hasn't. It hasn't. And again, you
me.
don't want to get in front of your skis. You don't want to depend upon the fact that you've got newer technology than we had 50 years ago. You don't want to take this thing for granted. And I don't think that Musk will. We've seen with his SpaceX program so far, with both commercial and human spaceflight, that he has taken the time to wring the problems out and get a substantial and a reliable program in place. That's not to say that he's not going to have problems. He could very well have problems down the line. We don't know. But his track record so far on cargo and human flight to the space station has been excellent.
Yes, it has.
And
been.
I think that reflects very well on the
Good point on the
professionalism.
cargo, Nick. The
Yeah,
cargo is very
yeah.
important.
Well,
And
the cargo is
Crew
what
Dragon-
started it out.
Yeah, and
The cargo is what gave NASA
Yeah.
the confidence to say, well, this guy can hack cargo, he can probably hack human flight, because he's paid so much attention to so much detail in putting all this together.
And case in point, I think the Falcon 9 took 18 tries before it landed,
Oh, yeah.
and he was down to his last.
And remember all those failures we saw trying to land on the barge that blew
Yeah.
up on the barge? Now he's catching them in the launch tower on the
Yeah.
Starship.
Yeah.
He's parallel parking a skyscraper is basically what he's doing.
Or hey, let's land one in the Bahamas for a change.
Mhm.
Okay, let's do it over there. Yeah,
Mhm.
the guidance system of this stuff is just amazing. I see a couple questions here. Well, Carlton Bailey, his comment is too many engineers seem to be book smart but lack common sense to see if the book is actually the correct way.
Very good point. You know, one of the things that we worry about is the loss of local intelligence, let's call it, the old heads, the guys who can greet you on the shop floor and say, welcome aboard. Now, I know the book says this, that, and the other, but here's how the system really works, and here's how the job really gets done. Because the manual can tell you so much, but it's only on the shop floor from the veterans that you're going to learn the reality, the applicable reality of what you're working on. So I think we've fallen into that gap where we lost so many people from shuttle, and now these new people are coming in with great ideas and great innovations, but without the local intelligence to bring them along and bring them gently into the fold.
And they're not respecting the legacy companies of Apollo. And look at the Surveyor spacecraft, the widespread landing wings and stuff like that. So they don't seem to want to look them up.
Well, what I tell young people is the first thing you should know coming into this this kind of businesses. History did not begin on the day you were born.
Mm-hmm. No, it didn't. Okay, good. That's good. Yeah, exactly.
Look back at your history, respect
Yeah.
it, utilize it.
Yeah. History didn't start when you got an A in your engineering at Embry-Riddle up there. Okay, there was, a lot of that was figured out before. Got some great, interesting questions here. Marty, Dean Babcock's got some Grumman questions that I'll let you answer. Do any type of drop tests on the lunar module, or was it impossible because of the design of the 1/6 gravity? And then he's also, well, I'll save that for a minute. Go ahead and mention that, Marty.
Yeah, we did drop tests. The drop tests are on vehicles called LTAs, lunar test articles. So they had drop tests on those. We did not drop test the flight lunar modules.
Thank you. As Michael Bruno says, they were even worried that the lunar module would tip over at 23 feet tall and 18 feet wide. And how many tons was it? Go ahead,
Well,
Marty.
I forget the tonnage. I could look it up, but I guess there was always some concern. Is some concern with anything that's going to go to the moon, but I don't think it was a hardcore which is one reason why we landed on a relatively flat part of the moon.
I think when you go back and look at 14, when Antares landed on a slope, that first night they were sleeping in the LEM, Shepard and Mitchell said, "Did you feel that?" "I didn't feel anything. Did you?" And it was in the back of their mind that they were on a slope, and could we be that one magic decimal point over the CG that sent us over on our side?
Yeah, they didn't sleep well either. Go in your bed and go in an incline tonight and see how well you sleep. Yeah, Marty.
It was an allowable slope if it landed, but I don't know what that is. It's somewhere greater than what Apollo 14.
I believe it's 15
experienced.
degrees, but
Is it?
but Steve Jokums is going to know that. I'll bet. And I'm thinking about a leg breaking. No, the unexpected that there's too much horizontal activity
Well,
and
they had those great shock absorber systems
Yeah.
built into the lunar module legs, but as you saw with the IM-1 and IM-2, this is something that it could have still had some forward delta V going for it and
Yeah.
snag the forward leg and send it
which I
over.
think's what happened to IM-1 actually.
Okay.
Was in there. Dave Stange is asking, were there any major changes to the LEM after Apollo 9 mission, Marty?
No, there were absolutely no major changes made after Apollo 9. And the module flew as designed. And Nick, to follow up on your statement there about it's actually translation, with the pilot, with the crew up there, you're not going to probably have that problem.
Yeah.
Like we've got Woodham watching. Thank you for joining our family, Woodham. This person says the surface was just more complicated than they planned for. Meaning the South Pole, it was too hard to find a couple of 100 square feet of flatness. That's true. And when you look at the pictures, you go down to the inches. There's craters everywhere you look. The moon has been bombarded for 4 billion years without an atmosphere. And that's why the lunar soil is like a fluffy, dry snow. It's like a regolith, they call it, and very, very like talcum powder. So that's why the lunar mountains of the old sci-fi movies were sharp and craggy like the Rockies. No, they're beat down and soft
Fairly
once we
smooth.
got there by the micrometeorites.
Well, Al Worden told me this story about them getting into lunar orbit on Apollo 15, and they're coming around on a pass, and they had the Hadley Apennine Mountains ahead of them, and Al was like, "Are we too low here? Are we heading toward those mountains?" And just as he was saying that, the ground came up and said, "We got a new state vector for you and a delta V change," and so forth, and got them. But it was just like the way he described it was like if you were sitting in the couch and you passed over those mountains, you just kind of unconsciously picked up your fanny to get over the mountains. I mean, that was some low flying.
That's great. Marty, why don't you ask interesting question from Dean Babcock there about the...
I'm trying to find his question.
Dean's asked, I see it right here. Dean says, could sabotage be a possibility of intuitive machines? Got a sci-fi going already. Maybe Ed Gibson's going to write something about that.
Well, I know that I looked over the Spaceflight Now page, where I first saw that picture of the lander on the IM-2 laying on our side. And then the next picture was in the processing room for one of the experiments on IM-2. And one of those technicians was of Chinese heritage. So I imagine something like that gets people thinking.
Uh-huh. Got a couple comments, Marty, there that maybe the deflectors were added after. What do you think about
that
that?
was after 10, yeah, but not after 9. There was no major changes
Oh, gotcha, after
after
9.
9.
Yeah, sweet there. So Jared Isaacman in the queue. Like you said, astronaut Fred Gregory thinks he's the right man
Yeah.
at the right time.
Very
What do you
excited.
think? What's
Very
everybody
excited,
saying?
very excited about Jared Isaacman coming on board because he has the wonderful mix of pilot, businessman, and flown astronaut. Now, many of our guys in that position, particularly Mr. Webb, were by and large professional bureaucrats. And I don't say that as a disparagement because, by God, Mr. Webb got us to the moon. But here you're going to see a unique combination of businessman, pilot, and astronaut. And I think he's going to have some very good insights in the way of innovation. I know from what I've read, I should say, I know him to be a proponent of human spaceflight. And I think that along with those lines, my guess is he's going to get along very well with Doge as far as looking for any fat that needs to be trimmed. I think he's going to look at it very realistically. He's going to look at it with the realism of the businessman and the eye toward safety of a pilot. So that's a good combination to have in that position. So I'm looking forward to what Jared Isaacman is going to accomplish. Now, I don't know when he's scheduled for his confirmation hearings. He's not cabinet level. They had to deal with all the cabinet level positions first before they moved on to the next tier of federal operatives. But I'm looking forward to his confirmation hearings and looking forward to what he's going to suggest as far as a space policy. Of course, space policy is set by the President of the United States. He gives the order to the administrator, and the administrator carries out the policy. But it's going to be interesting to see what his contributions are going to be in that regard.
And lo and behold, NASA is now in charge. In charge of NASA is Janet Petro,
Yes.
Kennedy Space Center director, who has spent the last 20 years of her life out there with, of course, Bob Cabana as his assistant, creating this whole private spaceport. So what do you think about Janet? You ever talk to her much?
I have not spoken to her. Unfortunately, I've not met her.
Yeah.
But as you say, she's part of that team working with Bob Cabana on the spaceport that we have out there now. Both government and industry working together out there, and that was a big goal for Colonel Cabana, was to institute this great partnership between government and private industry, and she was a part of that particular work. So I think she's doing a good job. But of course, as deputy administrator, she's probably going to be thinking of, let's hold the keel even for right now until the next administrator comes in and policy is set. So
well, I think it's good that she's an experienced person that the administration put in there and just didn't put some number cruncher to watch over stuff or something like that. She's we've tried to talk to her and stay curious. It's just never worked out. But her father was a big Apollo worker too. An
interesting
talking about Janet Petro.
An interesting topic that's come up lately as far as KSC is concerned. There are some people who are saying, let's take NASA headquarters out of D.C. and bring it down to Kentucky.
Oh, yeah, right.
Because apparently we've got a lot of room in that new headquarters building. I think that a lot of the NASA people are saying, well, it really helps when you're close to the congressman's door. We need to go over and ask for something or set some policy. Speaking for myself, and this is only me speaking, I say keep headquarters in Washington, D.C., because I don't want those bureaucrats coming down here and screwing up the Space Coast with a bunch of French restaurants and fancy lobbyist homes and all the rest of that stuff. No, they can stay up and watch. Just leave the folks alone. We'll get the work done. You guys stay up there take care of your Washington game up there.
I'll bet there'll be a conversation with you and Mr. Gregory when he
Oh
comes
yeah,
in a month
yeah,
there and
yeah.
enjoying an adult beverage and a fine smoke there. Well, I've enjoyed this conversation with you, Nick, as usual. Marty, is there anybody that's got a good question for
Yeah,
him?
Mark, well, there's a couple of good
Uh, uh,
comments that were earlier on that you didn't get to. And I don't know if this is IX or Roman numeral 9, but he's saying Pamela Melroy said there was no offer of an expedited return, at least at Ridge headquarters, to bring them back early. And another comment came from a Woodwin, which I like. He could have told both of them 10 years ago that this was going to happen, and they would both choose to do it. Talking
Yeah.
about the
Butch and Sonny.
Butch and Sonny,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, that's a good.
That's
you
true.
think, what
Yeah, I agree.
comments
I
there?
think so. You could have told them that 10 years ahead of time. They say, yeah, we can hack that. But if you told them that 10 years ago, they would have been prepared for it.
Yeah, their families have been prepared
Yeah,
for it
so-
because, let's face it, you and I, we know a couple astronauts, and you know them well too, that we've taken out to dinner, and one of them said after 3 space flights, my wife said,
Mhm.
no more,
Mhm.
basically.
It's a strain.
It is such a traumatic stress on lots of some families. I'm not
Well,
gonna say all of them.
one of the guys, Sam Gamar, talks about that topic, and he says, you know, this is an adventure that I signed up for. It's not something that my wife or kids signed up for. So it's, you know, you look at it from that perspective. And again, I tell the story of one astronaut, former shuttle astronaut, and his wife came to watch shuttle launch over the visitors complex, and we did some public stuff. And the vehicle takes off and up in the sky, SRB set and MECO, and everything's good. So we go back to the office, and the astronaut's wife turns to her husband and says, you know, I thought I could do this because you weren't on board, but I can't. I can't ever do this again, because the trauma of being on that roof of the LCC for her husband's launch was still there. And it's almost in a sense similar to PTSD. It's something that you don't get over. And if people think that the roof of the LCC is champagne and caviar on launch night, you got another thing coming. There's a lot of trepidation. There's a lot of worry. Fred served as an astronaut family escort for one launch, and he said the tension on that LCC roof was so thick you could cut it with a knife. So, like I say, it's not champagne and caviar up there.
Where else you going to get these stories but from Nick Thomas and here on Stay Curious? That's why we hope you tell your friends and space lovers to tune into us, particularly when we broadcast Nick on here. Just awesome. I got chills thinking about that, really, just wrapping your head around that on there. Marty, what we got any? I know that Tom Usiak and the Usiak family gave us the money to buy that microphone he uses. Tom really probably riled up by saying, Mark, like Nick says, we won the race to the moon.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
We already won the race
Before
to
you
the
got
moon with
the first
Apollo
country.
11. All right.
The next goal is who's going to be the first country to return to the moon.
Yes,
It's going
exactly.
to be us.
It's going to be us. I hope it's us there. Marty, anything else you see there we need to share with Nick?
Yeah, first, I hope I didn't miss any comments or any questions, because we got a long list of them. But anyway, we have one from Douglas Paxson. Why did Nixon talk to the astronauts on the landline phone?
What, when they were on the surface of the moon?
I guess that's what he's talking about.
Because he was the president
Because
of
we
the
didn't have
United
cell phones.
States. And that's where he was supposed to be. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
And
whoever would have been the president
peop-
would have done it.
People say that, well, Nixon didn't have anything to do with the space program. He ran against Kennedy and this, that, and the other. But he was president of the United States. He had every right to be there. The same way as Bill Clinton would have, or Barack Obama, or Ronald Reagan, or whoever was sitting in the Oval Office at that time. That was his job, because he was representative of all the people of the United States of America. And he belonged on that call, and he belonged on the aircraft carrier when the guys came back home.
Good answer, Marty. Another one? Anything else? Let me look here on our laptop there.
I just hope I didn't miss anything.
They should schedule Nick for talks at the visitor center in between his astronaut talks there. And we'll work on that when he's enjoying what
Well,
you're doing. I know you.
I used to do mission status briefings along with the work for the astronauts. But as we came out of COVID and we came back online, we pretty much decided that handling all the logistics of the astronaut office, schedules, itineraries, hotel reservations, content, everything, that it would be better if I turned my attention completely to the affairs of the office, which is what I do now.
And he does an excellent job. Right, Sharon Rodriguez. I know you're watching from she's out there running the gift shop. Sharon is at the Sands History Space Museum, another hidden gem here on our coast of space out there. Marty?
Yeah, I'm not sure if we actually covered this, but Dean Babcock asked earlier, Nick, could you share your thoughts on the future of Artemis program?
Yeah. We've been talking about that, and there have been a lot of discussion about the costs of the Space Launch System and getting back to the moon. Again, we're going to have to wait for the president's policy to come out on this. But I think that, for instance, we already have the solid rocket boosters for SLS-2 stacked in High Bay 3 of the Vehicle Assembly Building. And the core stage will be coming in and added to that shortly. So we will proceed with SLS-2 and that circumlunar flight of the moon. I think beyond that, it'll be the discretion of the president and the Space Council as to where we go from there. Now, I see the SLS as a valuable tool. Maybe not the only tool in the toolbox. Perhaps it can be assisted in some simpler way, shall we say, by the Starliner, or not the Starliner, excuse me, the Starship. But there's a lot of work that has to go on with Starship. So I think for right now, our wagon is pretty well hitched to the Space Launch System, and I see no problem with that.
Great. Another question, Marty?
Michael Bruno is asking, did Werner von Braun have an office there after Apollo?
No, Dr. von Braun, after the Apollo program was transferred over to Washington, D.C., his primary office was, of course, the Marshall Space Flight Center in Huntsville, Alabama. But during the early days, in the 50s, Dr. von Braun had an office, of course, over on Cape Canaveral, and one of his satellite offices was over in Hangar C, which is right next door to the Cape Canaveral Lighthouse. So Dr. von Braun did have presence on the Cape, but as soon as plans were unrolled for the Saturn V, Dr. von Braun moved himself and all of his attention to Marshall Space Flight Center, where that vehicle was being born. And then, as I say, after Apollo, he was moved to a position in Washington, D.C., which he did not like, which he felt he was being parked off on the side. And that was not a very happy experience for Dr. von Braun. I know leaving Huntsville was terrible for him and for his wife, Maria, because they had so many friends there. And they said that when they gave the farewell party for Dr. von Braun, it was like there were tears in the street, and people were rending their garments because they didn't want to see Dr. von Braun leave, because he'd become so much of a part of the social fabric of Huntsville, Alabama. He gave to a lot of charities. He made a lot of things possible. He helped to build a astronomy and observatory there. So he was very, very well beloved in Huntsville, and they hated to see him go.
And the schnitzel in Huntsville, oh, I've eaten a few places in there. It's great. It's a cool town. Being in Upper East Tennessee, going to Chattanooga quite a few times, real near there. It's really a great place there. So I know you've all enjoyed this, kind of a record number of viewers. Douglas Paxson, thank you for joining our Stay Curious family. Cliffy, there you are, your arse hat there. Before you came on, I said that's the Australian Research and Exploration hat there for their NASA. Wooden, thank you, Wooden. And 9, the IX is on there. Mark Thell, he had a couple questions. Thank you for those. Carlton Bailey, Tom Usiak, Mark Warbitz, Connie McDaniel, who worked her buns off over the weekend for us. Appreciate that, Connie. Michael Bruno, Larry Pushker, Tom Celentano, Mark Usiak, Dean Babcock. Bob Mayran's one of our new family members here. Is this Julie Clay, who also helped us paint this weekend. And Dave Stangy and Mia. Hope Grandpa learned something today, Mia. Now go tell him you deserve an ice cream, okay? And Steve Jokums, of course, and Mitch Rothman. And so, have you met Mitch yet?
No, not yet.
Steve was at last year's Shuttle Fest.
Okay.
I'm sure I'll make sure you meet him again. So thank you all for kicking off a great Monday here at Stay Curious. We're going to have Carlton come on the set here tomorrow and talk about covering space launches and a little more space history. We'll look at shuttles of the month of March also. 10 beautiful shuttles launched in the month of March on some great missions as usual. So, Marty, anything over there from you?
Nope, look good.
Okay. Well, until next time, we have Nick Thomas on and the wonderful stories he has to tell. Appreciate it a lot,
Okay.
my friend.
Bet. Thank
And,
you.
so until next time, I'm Mark Marquette saying thank you all for watching. We appreciate your support of the American Space Museum and wonderful guests like Nick. And I will see you soon, I hope, to bridge the space between us. Thank you.